Yeah.
All right, let's start. Jakob de Geer, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jakob de Geer. I'm the CEO and founder of a mobile payments company called iZettle, based out of Stockholm.
And I'm Sven Grönberg. I'm a reporter for the Wall Street Journal based in Stockholm. Now, you've been here at Slush now for the past days, and of course you've been seeing a lot of the Finnish startup scene, and you're from Stockholm yourself, or from Sweden. Could you please make some comparisons between the Swedish and Finnish startup scenes? The reason I'm asking is because I was at a dinner with Index Ventures yesterday, and they were saying that Helsinki is now equally vibrant as Stockholm as a startup scene. So maybe you can elaborate on that and what you think.
Sure. I mean, I think that this conference is a great example of how interesting this market is becoming. If you compare it to Stockholm, I'd say that Stockholm is probably still slightly more mature. If you look at the diversity of companies that come from that area. If I look at the Finnish startup scene right now, it seems as though Finnish entrepreneurs are very geared towards obviously mobile gaming, given the phenomenal success you had over the couple of years. But I think that will change over time. So I think it's very, very interesting and healthy state.
Would you say that there's a lack of diversity in the Finnish scene right now, in terms of that it's too geared towards just one business?
It's tough to say whether there's a lack of diversity. I think there is diversity. I mean, I just gave a speech on the main stage, and right after I had 3 or 4 different companies that were not into gaming coming up. So I'm sure there's a lot of companies out there. It's just that what we see right now is primarily gaming companies, again, given the fantastic success of some Finnish companies.
Now, I have some questions about iZettle. I mean, your solution, basically, a peripheral for mobile devices to use cards. You're building upon an existing and very traditional payment method. I mean, one would even try to say that you're conservative, I guess, I mean, in a sense. So how would you say that iZettle is stacking up against other mobile payment solutions? And what makes iZettle better, according to yourself?
We are, from that perspective, in regards to which kind of payments we do accept right now, which is card payments, we are boring and we are conservative, if you like. But from my end, that's not the end game of mobile payments. We see payment as a backdoor to merchants, a fantastic way of helping any business to start accepting card payments, which is such a fundamental piece of infrastructure if you run a business today. So starting off from that by itself, I think it's pretty spectacular to allow for anyone, whether it's individuals or the smallest of micro merchants, to start taking payments. But I mean, where we are going, it's obviously much more interesting. And what we want to do, apart from democratizing card payments, is helping businesses grow their business. How can we help the small cafe on the corner understand the actual data that they have? How can we help them communicate with their customers, help them with CRM and loyalty tools in order for them to grow their business in a way they've never been able to do before? I mean, all these systems that we're talking about, if you're H&M, for example, I mean, you definitely have them. They're very sophisticated systems. But if you're the cafe on the corner, what you have is payment terminals and your own common sense, if you like, on how to grow your business.
So what you're saying here is that, I mean, you're not too focused on the payment method, rather than providing a service to people to accept money? Or, I mean, are you saying that, how long do you think people will continue to use cards? Or is that an irrelevant question?
No, it's funny. This industry, the payment industry, it's a very exciting industry from many perspectives. But I think a very common problem that they're up against is that all payment companies are trying to innovate, and they're trying to find they're working backwards in a way. So they're making solutions looking for problems rather than the opposite way. And I think there are some great examples of those types of technologies coming to market. From our perspective, card payments per se, it's a pretty good solution for the consumer. I mean, if I ask most of my friends, do you think it's a poor experience paying with your card? Most of them will say, no, it works pretty well. I mean, I put in my card, I enter my PIN, and then it's done. If you ask most banks, it's funny because they're always looking for the next generation of payments. So they're looking at the next generation of mobile payments, which is either tap your phone or sing a song and dance a dance, and all of a sudden the transaction will just happen. But none of the consumers are really looking for that. And consumer behavior is so hard to change. On average, it takes 5 to 7 years. And in financial services, as anyone will know, it's even tougher. So from my perspective, we're starting off exactly what the consumer is used to, and then from there you can shift into other types of payments.
So I mean, your company will shift according to the user habits rather than trying to force upon them a solution.
Yeah, I mean, the benefit with our solution compared to, I'd say, all of the incumbents is the fact that we are cloud-based. And even though that's, by now a pretty well-used buzzword, the benefit for us is that we can add acceptance for any type of payment, whether it is sing a song and dance a dance, or whether it is NFC, or whether it is mobile wallets. I don't know how much money that's gone into the mobile wallet space, and still there is no real relevant mobile wallet. I mean, I think the biggest problem for all mobile wallets out there right now is that they remain irrelevant unless they find their way into the physical commerce. 95% of all commerce is done offline. It's not done online.
Now, your fees typically in Sweden or Finland are around 2.75%, right? Or
yeah, it seems like some sort of industry standard right now.
I mean, isn't that a big problem that it costs so much to use electronic payments rather than cash?
Again, I think it depends what you compare it to. I mean, no payment type is free. I mean, handling cash is not free for a merchant. And you have to handle that type of process, and you've got to make sure that someone takes care of your cash by the end of the day. If you take electronic payments online, the standard offering is around 3% plus, 30 euro cent. And if you look at us, with no fixed fees, no monthly fees, no additional fees, we work on 2.75%, and that's how we make a living. So I don't particularly think that we are too expensive. It's a pay-as-you-go model, and it's perfectly adapted for the small micro merchant. If you're a bigger merchant, like H&M again, or a big restaurant in central Helsinki, then there are great solutions from banks and others where you can actually decrease your transaction fee, but instead you're locked into lengthy contracts and a lot of fixed fees. So there is an economic balance depending on how big your company is.
Do you ever see your fee coming down?
It's already coming down. We implemented as a trial in the UK just this August something we call the Smart Rate. A Smart Rate is effectively a way of helping merchants, pushing them even further into using card payments. So the more they sell, effectively the less they pay. So it's a sliding scale based on volume that they accept on a monthly basis. So we're trying that to see the effect. First of all, how merchants like it, and second of all, obviously how it plays us for us. So I think that's definitely that's probably where we're going to go across the rest of Europe as well. Don't know when. We're still in trial phase, but it's working very well in the UK.
Now, I know from previous conversations I had with you that you're a pretty avid critic of traditional banking and how it looks today. Can you spell out exactly what you think is the problem with today's banking?
Yeah, I mean, that's putting me in an interesting position. Thanks. I'm not a critic of banks per se. I think they are relevant. However, I think there is a fundamental lack of innovations. And I listened to Björn Wahlroos the other day in Uppsala, during an entrepreneur day. And one of his conclusions was that it's fascinating to see that no media companies nor any banks actually innovate the next big thing. The next Twitter will probably not come from the media industry, and the next iZettle won't probably come from the banking industry. I mean, just look at your internet bank in Finland or in Sweden. I mean, come on, to be frank, it looks pretty much the same as it's done over the last 10 years. So my point here is that banks should work together with entrepreneurs that are fast and nimble and are pushing the boundaries in order for them to remain relevant. And I think this becomes even more and more important. I mean, if you look across Europe right now, there are so many services potentially killing important revenue streams for banks. That might be transfer-wise, the way you transfer money between markets. I mean, they do it for a fraction of the cost compared to the bank. It's not that the bank don't want to, but it's it's a tough decision to decrease the rates. Looking at eToro, for example, amazing social way of investing together. I mean, you can see whatever investor in whatever country copy his or her portfolio. Look at a guy in India who's the expert on Indian blue chip, for example, and then just copy his trade. I mean, taking away that from banks as well, I mean, this is just the beginning. And then you have us. We're not trying to take the bank's revenues right now. We're, working with a segment that's way below what's interesting for them. I mean, just saying that innovations is happening, and, entrepreneurs will keep pushing the incumbents to a certain level where it's questionable how relevant they are. It's just a matter of time before you have a way of taking house loans through some sort of collaborative loan method in Scandinavia as well, I'm sure.
So, I mean, if this is an opportunity, do you think you will start another enterprise? Doing traditional banking? Or untraditional banking, I guess?
I got into entrepreneurship after having spent the summer at a bank and promised myself that I wouldn't become a banker. I still haven't really come to terms with that promise, but you should never say never, I guess.
So, I mean, do you think that banking won't look the same in what's going to look like in 5 years, for example? I mean, from now.
Well, I don't know what the traditional bank as we know it today, what it will look like. It will most definitely still have a very important role to play. Everything from a trust perspective to security for consumers and so on, and being very regulated, which is a great thing. But I think what interests me, what I would like to see is some company, whether it's an investment company or whatever type of company, starting to putting all these new entrepreneurial banking services under one roof, creating the next generation bank. Because I'd say that the biggest problem for banks right now is the legacy of old technology. They are still running on outdated servers from Stone Age, where most others run on the cloud and can just scale like that. So I mean, if someone can just put all the pieces of this puzzle together and create the next generation bank, I think that would be massive.
So why don't you do it? I mean, that's I have to go back to it. It seems like you're thinking about this a lot.
No, obviously we think about it a lot. I mean, I'd say 95% of my business is unfortunately not about creating, or at least my job is not creating new services. It's actually dealing with regulatory and dealing with FSAs in Europe and in South America, and making sure that they understand what we do and how we are compliant, because the regulatory landscape it's getting more and more complex. Europe is by far one of the more mature continents in terms of financial regulatory, imposed by the US, obviously. And in the US, that's about to happen. Latin America is becoming more and more complex. So, I mean, regulatory and the guys who can solve the regulatory parts, those will be the winners of next generation financial services.
Very interesting. I don't know how much time we have left here. We're done. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.